Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me in this podcast on using sunlight in treating health conditions according to Ayurveda. Now, of course, we all know that sunlight is our source of vitamin D, D3, and many people are short in vitamin D3, so we can conclude that many people are not getting sufficient sunlight. We also know that D3 deficiency is can lead to degenerative bone conditions, and we need the D vitamins to absorb the calcium and to build our bones. We also know that lack of sunlight can create what's seasonal affective disorder or SAD, where people feel more depressed and are more inclined to suicide in climates that have less sunlight. So, we know these things already, but what it really tells us is that we all need to have more sunlight. And now, what I'm going to share, though, today is not more research off the internet about the benefits of vitamin D3, which I think most people are well aware of, but I'm going to talk about what conditions Ayurveda recommended more sunlight. Now, of course, you're going to see this aligns with modern science. Science is always late to understand the things. I never say, follow the science. I think, no, you got to follow the empirical knowledge, what people did for thousands of years, whether you could prove it or not. And this is another case in point. Ancient people knew you needed sunlight, particularly for many health conditions, and they didn't know the word vitamin D or D3, which is a chemical, because there was D2, there was D1, and they are working on D3. So D3 does not grow on trees. It's still a synthetic substance. There are food-based versions now of D3, which would be recommended over most of the synthetic D3 that everybody's taking, thinking is so healthy. And of course, there's many people who are very deficient in D3, not just due to no sunlight, but due to their restrictive diet. Of course, ghee, is a dairy product, and all, dairy has D3 in it. So it's one reason why Ayurveda does encourage, ghee as the premier oil, because all of our other oils are not going to have vitamin D in it like ghee does, or butter. So it's just why it's very important to have a balanced diet and not be too restrictive, because you can create nutritional deficiencies, and sometimes these restrictive diets, particularly like a vegan diet without any dairy, can be short in D3. But again, most of us, because of our lifestyle, need more D3. And these are the conditions that, for me as an Ayurvedic doctor, would tell a patient they need to spend time in the sun. One is depression, where we're feeling the person is coming to me with depression. The last thing we really want is a person staying in bed. So I tell them, as soon as the sun gets up or you wake up, you should immediately go outside. Even if you're just lying down outside in the sunrise and the sun, you should still get outside, out of the dark room, and be in the sunlight. Now, of course, getting out of the dark room when you're depressed. Depression is a type of dark state of the mind, and its lack of pitta dosha. The sunlight is offering the pitta dosha. So in Ayurveda, all conditions that are low in pitta, um, and depression is a type of a kapha condition where you feel heavy, slow, sluggish, unmotivated, and ultimately you can feel depressed if there's too much kapha, in your nerves, in your head, and you feel unmotivated. So the pitta, the sunlight in this case, is, balancing that kapha, removing this cold, dark, heavy state of the mind. So it's more than just the vitamin D. I don't think taking vitamin D necessarily means your mood's going to get better. I wouldn't tell somebody who's depressed to take vitamin D3. I would tell them to get outside in the sun, because the sunlight has more benefits than just, helping our bodies create D3. And I think this is one of the fallacies of taking D3. People think that this substitutes for sunlight, but there's much more to it than that, which science has not yet figured out. We know that, of course, stimulates the serotonin in the head and helps to, you know, synchronize the circadian cycle. And we know a lot, but we don't know everything. Science is usually the last to figure things out or prove things that we already know. So, maybe in the future there'll be more information why, being out in the sun helps with depression and mood. But Ayurveda has been advocating it, particularly the morning sunrise for depression. Now, other conditions, even sleep, is part of so you're not looking for the D3 here to improve your sleep. It's just, being exposed to the light in the morning and in the evening helps. We now know science has now figured out helps, regulate the circadian cycle and helps to prevent staying up too late at night because when you're outside and the sun goes down slowly, this is signaling the body. And when we're inside with all these bright lights, then, the body's never getting the signal to it that it's time for sleep. Of course, in the old days, they only had candles, and the candles don't artificially mess with our circadian cycle. So that's why when you go camping, for example, and you're just sitting around a campfire, everybody's like tired at 8:30 and just passes out because we don't have any bright lights to keep us up. So even in your house, not only could you get some sunlight in the day, but you should, try to use just candles at night, and that won't keep you up. But particularly fluorescent lights are very unhealthy, more so than iridescent lights. But candle is the healthy light. That little flickering, warm light will actually help, you go to sleep. Make sure you get that candle turned off, or it's safely going to go out by itself if you're going to go to sleep. So even insomnia can be improved by more sunlight and less bright artificial light in the day. And then another condition I tell people they need more sunlight for is a lot of skin conditions, and particularly infectious skin conditions where there's like bacteria growth or fungal growth on the skin. Then we have certain oils in Ayurveda. Most of them are based in coconut oil, and the herbs are in the oils. We do sell some of these herbal skin oils on herbmanteas.com. And in fact, there are some new cosmetic products on Herbman Teas as well. One for psoriasis. We call them ointments now. But I put a little shea butter with these traditional Ayurvedic oils and called them ointments. And there's one for psoriasis and one for eczema. And we tell people, to put this over your body, and maybe coconut oil for the whole body, and then the bad areas, these ointments, which we provide, and then get in the sunlight, but not allow the skin to dry so much. Just allow the pitta dosha, the sun, to liquefy that oil and help it penetrate deep. And we know sunlight, just like heat, when we get a fever, kills infection. So if you have infection, particularly on the skin, then sunlight is recommended with these oils. It's part of the treatment. And of course, there's other benefits too for being in the sunlight. We know it builds more immunity and more strength. And those people who even work outside tend to get and are exposed to more sunlight tend to get less flus, less colds. We kind of know this. And now, of course, thanks to science, thousands of years later, we kind of know why, because D3 has effect on our immunity. So that's why they always say if you're not taking enough D3, you can have degenerative bones and more weaker immunity. But it's really a lack of sunlight. So this is why sunlight is so important. Good food is important. Fresh air is important. Sunlight's important. Physical activity is important. And sometimes people are eating very well, but they're in a polluted city and breathing in all the toxins from the pollution. Or sometimes they're eating very well, but they're not getting sufficient sunlight. So, we have to return to nature, return to what our creator expected us to do. And we could say even return to what our creator expected us to be. I find a lot of people are trying to be things that, weren't created to be, but I digress. Another condition, of course, as per Ayurveda and modern science, finally catching up to ancient wisdom, is building bones. But in Ayurveda, it's not just bone development. I mean, in our modern society, we talk about D3 helps you to absorb calcium and build bones. And that's why the doctor, if you have osteopenia, osteoarthritis, any degenerative bone condition, tells you to take a bunch of D3. Um, well, Ayurveda goes a little further than that because they're not looking at such an isolated view or of the benefits of sunlight. But the sunlight is building according to Ayurveda. It helps increase the metabolism, helps the cells to kind of reproduce and build bones, even build muscle, even build tissue, because of this quality that's coming from the sun has far more benefits than just the D3. I'm not a scientist and don't, specialize in the different rays of the sun. We have that whole spectrum of colors from purple, red, orange, yellow, green, blue. I'm not sure. And then we have red light, we have blue light, and we as humans absorb certain um, frequencies of light, and trees avoid other frequencies of light. So in Ayurveda, it's very healthy to be outside in the sunlight under a tree. And we know that of course, the trees absorbing certain rays they're actually the trees absorbing the harmful UV rays that can harm our body, and those are the rays that it wants. But the rays that the human needs are different than the trees. So the tree absorbs the harmful rays when you're in the shade of a tree. That's why we like the shade of a tree. It's not that direct sun, but you're still getting sun. That's the best sunlight, slightly shaded by a tree, not a plastic tarp. And even sunglasses can blocking the sun from your eyes. And I have to admit, I did see some research on this in the past because when I was a young man, I was 18 years old, somewhere in the 70s. One of my early teachers told me never wear sunglasses. And I don't know, when I was young, I just followed the teacher and I didn't really question it. I never wore sunglasses my whole life, even though I do own a pair. But I recently saw research that those who wear sunglasses have more eye problems, cataracts, glaucoma, etc., from not having sufficient sun on their eyes. Because the eyes, there's also many benefits that we're getting from sunlight. Besides just D3. We're not getting D3 through our eyeballs. We get it through our skin, but there's other benefits we're not able to really understand at this point, that are helpful for our eyes, probably because if it's healing, warming, nature, it's helping our eyes. So I was very glad to see that years ago. It just popped up that they did a big survey of thousands of people, and those who wore no sunglasses had better eyesight than those that wore sunglasses. And so I'm always surprised when I see people in a city like New York or Norway where there's not much sun anyway, and it's the winter time, but the sun's out finally, or it's out. They have a little short period of sunlight, and they're wearing sunglasses when they really need this sun to reach their eyes. So sunlight is infinitely more important to our health than I think we're aware of. But my philosophy has always been do what is natural and what we probably should be doing. And that's one reason I live in the countryside where I can get clean water, fresh air, and compels me to be outside in the sun. I don't really live off my garden, but yeah, it's one of those healthy habits that gets you outside, grounding in the earth, which is another subject, being connected with the earth, which is why I never want to live on a second floor, even sleep on a second floor, because you want to stay grounded as much as you can to the earth. Maybe I should do a webinar on that subject. But gardening, you're getting the sunlight, the physical activity, and, the connection with the earth. And if you eat some carrots right out of the ground without cleaning them, you're gonna get all that healthy bacteria, and this is tremendously healthy. And probably the main reason I do gardening, and because I just wanna develop the skill of being a good gardener, and this does take many seasons. So I hope that helped you understand the benefits of sunlight. Of course, the morning sunlight is and the evening sunlight is the best. I work all day, and so I sometimes go outside and check my animals in my garden, and then I kind of lie down in a cot outside as the sun is going down and try to get it on my body. Now, one more condition, or there are a few more, but it's in the same area of building immunity. But also, there's research, we'll say, that those who do sunbathing, there was some research out of, I think, Netherlands, where women who sunbathed topless had much lower rates of breast cancer. And then there is other research that says a man, if he gets sunlight on his testes, will also help prevent and even help cure prostate cancer. So there are schools of thought. I don't remember reading about this in Ayurveda, but I share it with you. Is that the human body, including the man's testes and the woman's breast, also need sunlight, and of course, modern society, even if we're going out to the beach, we're obviously covering up our reproductive organs. So even if we're going to the beach, we may not be getting enough sunlight on our groin. So that was research there. I just want to clarify what's research and what's ancient knowledge. But sometimes, with a good sense of common sense and awareness of ancient knowledge, that really makes sense to me, that it's not just certain parts of our body that need the sunlight, but our whole body needs some amount of sunlight. So, definitely, if you're not going out and getting sun every day, try to get out in that morning sunrise, and that really, wakes you up. I've sometimes got up and just half groggy and sleepy, and went out, let the chickens out, and then dropped in my cot and fell right back to sleep early in the morning, and then just allowed the sun to wake me up, particularly in the summer where it's not cold at all. You can just go out in the morning. It feels good. Maybe the house was a little stuffy from the night, and I go out early in the morning and it feels fresh. And you get out there in the sunrise, and it just really wakes you up, and you feel more rejuvenated, more awake, and it will help you to sleep better if you get that morning sunrise. So, build your bones, improve your mood, help your sleep, disinfect your skin, prevent cancer, or help prevent cancer. I mean, to prevent cancer, a lot of things need to be done. I've spoke much on cancer, and it's usually, deficiencies, lack of good air, or lack of good food, lack of good water, lack of sunlight, that are creating these types of serious health conditions. So I'm sure there's a lot of health conditions that we probably aren't even aware of that are benefited by sunlight. So I strongly encourage you to add this to your health routine, not just good food, exercise, good water, fresh air, but regular sunlight, particularly early morning and setting sun. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this helped you to be more motivated to get more sunlight and improve your health by getting out in the sun every day. Thank you very much.